Arising from developments across the country, e.g., the 5th anniversary of the abduction of the Chibok schools girls in Chibok, Borno State, and reactions by the Buhari media organization on the benevolence by Mr. President on the payment of backlog of the allowances to public servants, civil servants in the country, and also prison reforms. We shall be going through that, and this fear by the public that government plans to increase pump price of petrol, even when the NNPC has assured that there are millions of these in stock. People should not go about doing panic buying. The fear is still there. So I have a team of guests with me here to do justice to this. Where are we with all this? Iretidola Ojekwao, public affairs analyst. Thanks for joining me on Insight.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
The Akinsiju, Chairman, Buhari Media Organization. Thanks for having me on the site.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Well, let's start with Mr. President's statement on the 5th anniversary marking of the abduction of the Chibok school girls in Borno State. And the paramount here is said to the parents, the case of your daughters is still in the front burner. Let me quote him, your daughters are not forgotten. But people are still saying it's a lip service. Why should it be so?
What Nigerians will have to start appreciating is that we have a president that is different in character and focus than perhaps those we've been having before, the kind of government we've been having before. What the president had cautiously done is to say that the people are at the center of my thoughts at all times. And once you are a Nigerian, you are of premium value to the to Mr. President. Of course, we know the trajectory of the Chibok kidnapping and all that till now. And we don't want to go to that, because the truth of the matter is that the government in place at that time lost initiative and lost action. And it took a long while before the action was triggered, either to track or to even negotiate for the return of the girls. And because of the nature of that initial redundancy, as it were, we lost so much. But again, these children are Nigerians, and that's the most important thing. They are Nigerians, they are children of Nigerians. And for us, that is value, and that is what the president is saying. That is, as long as they are Nigerians, is value. Wherever they are in the center of our thought. And the president is saying, negotiation is still his own. Despite the fact that there is a frontal attack on the Boko Haram sects or the Iswa sect, whatever sect they may be, on the other side there is a negotiation for the release of these children. It is not a forgotten thing. It is still in the front burner, and the important thing is to continue to give hope, to the parents of these children, particularly, and of course to Nigerians, and to create a new value system that emphasizes the centrality of the Nigerian person. And I'm saying 1 out of 200 million Nigeria is as important as the 200 million Nigeria. That is the direction of this government, as it were.
Just for amplification, on Leah Sharibu's abduction, the president assures that the interlocutors have reported encouraging progress so far. Her return to her family, it reveals, has unfortunately been hindered by the fear of the militants. So there's hope, right?
There is hope, yeah, indeed. I want to believe that the actions by the present administration has been commendable, especially when you compare to what we had in last administration. No, you may want to say, oh, don't compare to then, but to know how far we have gone, we must know where we're coming from. I remember one interview that Mr. Obasanjo gave then former President Obasanjo, and he said very clearly, he said, when there's an abduction of that kind, he said the first 24 hours is paramount. He said after that first 24 hours, the next most important hours will be the next 24 hours after that. That's 48 hours. He said after that, whatever you're doing, you have missed, you know, the real opportunity to get those children back. And that was what happened then. You know, so when it comes to the Chibok girls, we missed the opportunity to go after them the way they were gone. The other set of girls, Dachi girls, were gone after. You know, immediately they went after them. They didn't bring them back that week, but you know, they had, you know, they had already surrounded them in such a way that, you know, the negotiations were on, and President could, you know, was bold enough to be telling us that the girls will come back. We don't just want to use firearms, the girls will come back. Because they had them where, you understand, they had the upper hand. Government had the upper hand, and they were able to get these girls back. You know, but having said that, concerning Leah Sheribu, I think I have said this in many fora, and I'm saying it again. She's as important as any other person, but we must, you know, remember that some other girls were saved. We must also remember that apart from Chibok and Dachi girls, several other girls were saved, and several other women and men were saved. So I believe very strongly that, you know, we are on the right path at making lives, you know, more important and all. And as per Leah, definitely I believe that, except the Boko Haramists become, as the president has said, so scared that they don't know what to do, or they are afraid to bring her back, or come to negotiation table. I believe that if the president says there's hope and she's going to be back, I believe that he's a man of his word.
Let me stay on you on this. A lot of persons didn't know about this. He sent special greetings to the 106 girls sponsored by the federal government to continue their studies at the American University of Nigeria, Yola, and commends the girls, now women, who have triumphed over it all. People didn't know that some of them are in school. What do you make of this?
Yes, I believe that federal government, in conjunction with American University here, they are trying to give them not just the kind of education they were having before they were abducted. You know, they are trying to give them something that in a few years' time we're going to look at them and say, wow, this can be the same girls that were abducted. You know, and I think it's a beautiful thing. You know, that they are, from their trauma, you know, from their pains, you know, there's going to be great gain. They are going to come out people we're going to be proud of, because, you know, they have stories to tell. And when the world, when you have people who have stories to tell, it's good for them to, you know, for you to upgrade them, to make them voices that can speak against evil, you know, at some other point in life. So I think it's a great thing. The federal government, in conjunction with American University, you know, they are doing a great job for the girls. Yes. Okay,
before we go to the last issue, let's go to the recent approval of the sum of 1.3 billion naira by the federal government to pay backlog of death benefits to the next of kings of 497 deceased staff from 116 ministries, departments, and agencies. And the Buhari Media Organization, where you are chairman, said is a demonstration of President Buhari's compassionate approach to governance. And a lot will say, how?
How? Well, of course, the how actually will start from the Chibok girls.
Just like I'm asking
example,
how.
You know, for you just talked about the Chibok girls being admitted into the American University. The truth of and perhaps we just put in perspective, the truth of the matter is the authorities, the management of the university offered them admission. It's the federal government that is paying 100%. Okay. They are on the scholarship of the federal government. So it talks to the kind of president we have, to the kind of government we have. And of course, you know that the president of any government, or the head of any government, characterizes the nature, you know, of the government, as it were. So if you see people being taken care of, being offered succor and all that, what it tells you is that you have a person of compassion at the center or at the head of governance. And that is why we are actually applauding. My friends will say ululating, as it were, this gesture by the government, by the president in particular. There was a time pensioners that were living, that were alive, old, and obviously suffering, could not access their pension returns, their pension money. either yearly, either in terms of monthly, or even in terms of disengagements. But now we are no longer even talking about that, because for the first time in the history of this country in the last 20 years, pensioners are no longer protesting on our streets, on our roads. We are not seeing them on television crying. They are being taken care of. Now, for the first time in the history of this country, in a long while, those who died, in service, in active service, they are next of kins. The family they left are being attended to, are being taken care of. That is compassion. We have moved away from an environment of no value, for the citizen, the environment of no compassion for Nigerians, to the environment of compassion and value being placed on individual citizen. And this is where civilization comes in. I feel proud to be associated with this president and this government, because however you want to look at it, you can see obvious paradigm shift in the conduct of business, of government, and the way government relates to the people generally. So when you talk of 1.5 billion, that usually was money meant to be divided and shared by some secret cabal somewhere in the civil service, But you can even go beyond that. We are talking of houses now being provided at very cheap rates for civil servants. It had not happened a long while. So to even describe it as compassionate is small. It talks about bonding, about a government that understands what value people bring to work, so that if by chance anything happens to you, died in active service, you would always be remembered. And it's also part of the fight against corruption, because what it also talks to is that you have a government that is willing and ready to take care of you if you are working for government. If anything happens to you and you died in service, the government would always relate to your family. Then if you leave office in active service after 35 years or as the case may be, the government will also be responsible for your pension. These are legacy conditions that guarantees life after active job, or that guarantees succor after sudden demise, from work. So it is time now for Nigerians to start rallying around this government, because the government wishes well, and it has gone beyond wishing. We are seeing the practicalization and the realization of these wishes in the public space.
Okay, what can you talk about the prison reforms?
Okay, yeah, many have complained about our prisons, that it's possible for someone to be lost in prison. It's possible for someone to be there, by name Sikiru Ainde, and in actual fact, it's another Badmos Sikiru that is there, all those kind of things, And so oftentimes the guilty, they walk free, and the innocent, they are locked up, and vice versa. So, part of the reform is to get our data right, to have a system whereby who is who, you know who is serving what term here and there, and so that each person can also be treated, well, as per what's the reason for being in prison, what is the charged with, and why is his case not being attended to as at when due, because there are people there. We were having a discussion in the office not too long ago, and the lawyer was saying that when he was on a person's case, he found out that the person's name was not anywhere, even for him to even start a case for him, there was no file anywhere, and this person was in prison. There was no case on him, there was nothing. And I also have experienced this, even with remand homes. You find out that this child is in here, and the warden is telling you that he's there, he's been here for 2 years. It's because we're waiting for his case to come up. And then you go and look, and then you find out there's no case. There's no case anywhere, you know. There's no case in the court. Yet the child is there, and someone is saying he's waiting for government to decide this case. So the reforms will involve a lot, you know, apart from, you know, of course, sleeping conditions, eating conditions, and all those things being taken care of. I also know that a basic part of it is to make sure that the records are straight, that files are treated as at when due, you know, and that's because they have good records for these files and all that.
Okay, I just had a discussion on decriminalization of petty offenses, and a very senior jurist was quoted as saying, what do you make of maybe a child hawker arrested with wares of 250 naira, and he's taken and convicted to pay a fine of 5,000 naira?
Please, let me just give an example before you go on. This child hawker you're talking about, I was on a case of a child who was in prison for 2 years. I'm not prison now. He was in remand home. It's like prison because they were locked up, you know, for 2 years. Why? Because a friend of his used what we call knockout fireworks during Christmas. It wasn't even him, but that friend was not living on that street. He came to say hello to him, and in saying hello to him, went on the street and threw fireworks. And for that fireworks, the police caught him, traced him to his friend, took the two of them, and charged them with that it was bomb blast. They were terrorism. Charged them with terrorism or something like that. And this child was locked up for 2 years. 2 years. And by the time we eventually came to the case and all that, you find out that it was one of the cases I said that there was really no case hanging on him, but he kept him there for so long, just on fireworks. So these cases they may sound very funny and all that, but they are everywhere. You know, our prisons, our remand homes, and so the reforms are really coming at, at the right time.
Let's get the line of thought of Niyi.
Yeah, the truth is, the prison system, it's a fundamental attachment to the larger civil system, because it is our filtration, is a channel of filtration when there's suspected or confirmed acts of criminality. It is a prison system that filtrates it, you know. And because of that, it has become all over the world perhaps the most important segment after the civil society. But unfortunately, over a long time in Nigeria, we have not given due profound attention to it as it deserves, to the extent that it is also a place that that limits people, but in the population of people could also be innocents. So much that some NGOs had actually postulated in Nigeria that about 30 to 40% of people in Nigerian prisons don't have business there. And then you now lump them in without a system that properly identifies them in the first instance, and secondly, provide comfort for them, and thirdly, where they are eventually, you know, remanded formally, thirdly, reform them, because the prison is supposed to be a reformative channel, you know. But the Nigerian prison system that we have seen and understood is a punitive system. And because of that, we will have this effect of multiplier criminality in our system. Somebody goes for the first time into a prison, he comes out or she comes out of that prison hardened than when she came in, because the system does not allow for proper rehabilitation. So this effort at reforming the prison system, as it were, is not just the only one. Over the last it has been on over the last 2 weeks. 2 years. Buildings, construction, and all that, feeding, increase in feeding allowances and all that. So for me, I think this is essential, and it should be very, very supported, you know, by civil society itself, because the government alone cannot actually, you know, provide for the comforts and the infrastructural needs of prison, of the prison system. So people should come together. What concerns me is that there are people who are innocent that are not supposed to be in the prison. But like she noted, where you don't have a proper filing system, how do you even start tracking? You know, I know of someone that was picked on the road when at that time for wandering as it were.
Or loitering.
Or loitering, you know. And by the time he was going to be seen in court, he was charged for armed robbery. And he was on that for more than 8 years. It was because an organization was able to track him, you know, that he was saved. A number of people would have ended up, you know, in being executed or going on life, you know, because when they were picked, there was nobody around them, so their families don't even know where they were.
Okay, thank you very much. How time flies. I thought I could touch on other issues. It was nice chatting with you.
Wow.
Iretidola Ojekwon, public affairs analyst. Always a pleasure having you on Inside.
Thank you very much.
And Ni Akinsiju, chairman, Buhari Media Organization. I believe if I was not regulated, you want to go on and on and on.
Of course, now we have so much to say about this government.
Up next on Inside is the media review segment. Don't go away.